welcome to the May 11th Architecture and Historic Review Board. We will begin with 60 and 66 Florence Avenue, please. I think, Patty, we just received the updated elevation sheets for those two houses, which were required for us to grant an approval. Is there any additional information for us?
Everything is what the board asked for.
Then I think these, does anyone have any comments?
There were no adjustments, is what I'm asking.
Right, well, there were
Just
the
the
adjustments to reflect what the presentation was made, changing the vinyl to the hardy plank, that stuff.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to make a motion, we approve this one application for the two houses as submitted. Do I have a second?
Second.
Yair, all in favor? Unanimous? Thank you. Next on the agenda is 100 Main Street. However, we didn't receive anything. You're just going to make a presentation based on
Yeah, we have been
previous
referred
comments?
to you by the planning board. We had a good planning board meeting on Thursday night. They reiterated their interest in knowing what you think of this new scheme that we've developed.
Okay.
This comes from our site walk in the middle of April. Michael, Ayer were both on that, so we had discussion. The general sense that I got was a concern with the proposal that we had made with the large single building pulled back from the front building, even though we were setting off the aqueduct, was that it just seemed like it was too large an independent building floating on the site. So there was discussion about could we do a structure that was more similar to the existing barn structure, and by doing that, kind of maintain that relationship as you're on the aqueduct between this property and the building that's across the street, which is Mr. Tilley's building. And could we make it up somehow with what we did at that point in the center of the site by having whatever square footage we were giving up so that we could still maintain it as the 4 residential units. So we did that, and we've taken a look at it. The drawing that I have here is different than what we presented Thursday night. Not so much that it was a reflection of anything that the planning board said, but more that we had only had 3 days to work on it because we were out of town. So we worked on it last week for the planning board. Since then, we've worked on it some more. So one of the concerns the night of the planning board that is a change is we were showing this middle section as a top floor that was that big. We've now cut that back, and I think it works fine. Just to walk you through quickly, this is the front building. This is where the back building is. We are proposing a structure that's almost 3 feet wider than the existing barn, but it's 6 feet shorter. So it's comparable in size. The eave is approximately 1.5 feet higher than the existing eave, and the ridge is about 3.5 feet taller than the existing ridge. So it's massaged a little bit so that the program can work in it, which is a 1.5-story structure above a level of parking. We've carried that line across in this section of the, if you will, the L, and then we pop up in this section to get the square footage we need so that we've got 2 very small 2 bedrooms, about 800 square feet, a 1 bedroom that's about 610 square feet, and then we get a 2 bedroom here, which is about 950 square feet. So we get 4 units in this building. One of the other things that had come up, not from the planning board, but from the village's consulting engineer and village planner, was a concern that with 1 building here and 1 new building here, even though they're attached, we had a multi-family complex, which is permitted by special permit. But the definition of a multifamily building is 3 or more units. So they were suggesting that we would need to get a variance for this building as a 2-family, which is what it currently is. What we have done is we've shown the connection coming across. This building, we could take the 2 double, I was referring to them as duplex, but the 2 units that are 2 floors, first floor and second floor, first floor and second floor side by side, we could break those into 4 residential units if that's something that the village wanted us to do. One drawback to that, not the only one being that there are people who are living there, and I'm sure they like it as it is that that would increase our number of units on the site from 6 to 8. We have provided the required parking on site for this project with 6 spaces. If we included the other 2, we would then need the village to either, well, I guess it's 3 things. It could grant us a variance, but I see no reason that they would do that because there would be then no payment. A second option is they could use the code, which entitles the board to grant us use of the sidewalk, for the curbside parking, which is supposed to count in this, although the village has still kind of decided they're not really doing that yet. So even though the code says that, they haven't done it. And the third, of course, is a payment in lieu of parking. So if we went with the 8 units, we would be 2 spaces deficient. We would need to pay for the payment in lieu of parking. Let me kind of bring this around so that you can kind of see.
Patty, where do they park right now?
Right now they park, if this is the existing barn, they park pulling in this way. There are 4 parking spaces in width there.
And that's what that existing building is using?
Right. So if I kind of do this, and I kind of pull this down, as I'm looking down Elm Street, you see the ridge, and the ridge comes in about at this point on Mr. Tilley's building. The eave is a little bit, it's about the midpoint of the ridge, the eave on this side. So I think it's a scale that's similar to that. As you come around and you look into here, if I can get, I like Bruce's Campidoglio. Actually, that was my Campidoglio, wasn't it? Okay. So what we've got is breaking this down into a series of masses, the barn location, the connection coming across, and then the piece in the middle. That piece in the middle is approximately 21 by 21. So it's a relative, if you looked in this room, it's probably the distance from that wall to that column, and from that wall to this column. So it's a relatively small footprint. Not sure what other views of this. We pulled the stair tower back. We changed the way this opens out onto the street so that we could make that a little bit better flow. There was discussion, we certainly aren't there yet with it, but there was discussion about doing something with landscaping in the strip along this side facing the yard, which we can develop further as we get ready for the next submission to the planning board. I don't know if you have any other specific questions. Hearing none, are you ready to approve? No. You couldn't approve it. It's not on the agenda that way. A lot, different materials, stucco on the one form, similar to the front, brick coming up through here, a board and batten in certain areas, and a clapboard in others. The clapboard would be a drop clapboard, similar to the siding that's on the existing building. We've played with this a number of times. What we showed to the planning board had brick, clapboard, and then the clapboard above. And I think one of the concerns was that the brick as just the base and then not going to that here made this, it seemed like the brick was too little a component in the building. I don't think I know which way is better on that yet. But I also don't think that's a planning board issue. So I would think that anything in terms of materials and detailing the materials, we could wait until the ARB is seeing an actual submission that it has to act on.
So Patty, the last time you were here, I think it was perhaps 2 meetings ago, we discussed, amongst other things, the repurposing of the existing structure and the feasibility of its adaptive reuse. Can you explain a little bit about? Yeah,
we've had 2 contractors go through and talk with us about what would be required to restore that building for use. It's very expensive, and when you're done, you've got a building that's not really, it's not like it's set up for what we're proposing the use to be. If it was gonna be used as a barn, if it was gonna be used as a playhouse or something like that, the kind of rough texture that you'd get resulting would probably be fine. For something that someone is using as their house, it doesn't really work to that. I know that there have been references made to unique structure of this. I'm still waiting for the reports back from the people that we've hired to actually do opine on that. When they walked through with us, they didn't know what I was referring to. I said I didn't want to tell them what I was referring to. I wanted them to figure it out. So at this point, we don't have anything that's saying that this is a historic structure. I know that the people in the community have said so, and I think it's often a mistake to ignore if that's a sentiment, and we stand by our willingness. If people feel that it's a significant enough structure that it warrants a restoration, we would be willing to move it across the street and take care of that cost ourselves, though we would not be paying for the restoration. Did you want to see what that looked like?
Which?
Moving it across the street?
No, it's okay.
No? Okay.
What do you do with planning?
So I guess really it's a matter of any
Saw
other
this the other night.
questions that you have on this, and there are people here today, so I don't know if they would like to speak, but that's your decision.
Well, just a moment. Would you care to?
Well,
Is that a site plan, Patty? Is that
Yes.
What you could? Would you mind bringing that up in a way that we can see?
It's hard because we don't get, it's almost like we have to turn down the color. I don't know if there's a way to adjust how bright it is.
That's okay. That'll allow us to discuss.
Yeah, I mean, just to walk you through quickly, here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 parking spaces, 20 feet, 24 feet, 20 feet. Backup area coming to here so that it facilitates moving around on the site. This is the stair tower. You're able to walk around that, coming in on either side of it as well behind it without going into the parking space. This is the existing bump out on the back of the building. This is the walkway that's there now to get to the 2 porches. This is where we've pulled back 5 feet, which gives, still lets light coming into there, although obviously we're blocking a major portion of it. I think, that's the basic format on that. This is showing that section. If I follow the existing barn, it's basically there. So
It's at a 1.5 foot lower. your
it's a
ridge line.
1.5 foot higher than the existing eave.
right.
Higher.
It's about 3.5 feet higher than the existing ridge.
Okay.
And it's, somewhere around, the building's not quite square, so it's somewhere around 3 feet wider than the existing building. The existing building's about 24 feet, and we're a little bit less than 27.
Do you plan to remodel the existing structure on Main Street?
That building was remodeled like maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I'm guessing maybe it's longer than that, by the previous owner of the property. That's when we actually became familiar with this site, because he needed some help getting that resolved with the village. So the existing building, at this point, the plan with that was not to be touching it. We initially proposed a significant rebuilding of it that would have added an additional floor. And having that be 6 residential units, that was when we were proposing 12 residential units for the site with all of the parking being across the street. So we've cut it back from the 12 to the 6. It could turn out to be 8 if the village said they preferred us to break the existing two-story units into 4 units. But as I pointed out, that would require that we have some accommodation for parking.
When you say parking across the street, what is
The
that?
village parking lot is across the street from this,
Oh, I see.
this one.
Yes.
So-
I know.
And there is a meeting on May 18th, which is going to be talking about our parking workshop strategies. And people have made good presentations recently documenting the demand for additional parking within the village.
Okay, thanks. Are there neighbors here that would care to share something? Yes, please. Whoever would like.
Could you put it back to the picture
Sure.
of Elm Street? If we're walking along Elm Street, what would you see? Okay, I'm Peggy Blizzard, 12 Chestnut Street. Twist it, right there. Okay. Aesthetically speaking, this is a total disaster. Look at that. It looks like a prison guardhouse. I've said that before. You see that balcony along there. You expect to see somebody walking back and forth with guns. That's what it looks like. Now, you've got to realize that buildings are a kind of public art. It's like a piece of sculpture. And you're going to have that to look at for the rest of your life. It's not going to disappear. Once it's there and we decide, oh, I don't like that building, it's still there forever. And that is one ugly arrangement of buildings. You're taking away all of that, what's there now, and you're crowding it in. And on the other side where he shows garden, that belongs to J.E. That's not part of this property. So you can't garden that. If he wants to have chickens there, that's his business. You can't do anything with that property. That's his. It's not going to be green like that.
This is on this.
But as I said before, it's just way too big. It's packed in. And it's just because the code might allow it doesn't mean that you have to push it right to the edge. There should be, that whole middle section should be out of there. I just don't think we can live with this. And if you look up and down Elm Street, you've got single-family houses. All along the aqueduct, you've got single-family houses there in that whole block. This is way too much, but I especially object to that prison guardhouse. That just won't do.
Thank you.
Bruce Richards, 153 Main. I'm not in the immediate neighborhood, but I have worked on the old library, what used to be the old library, for the last 12 years, and I can totally concur that getting into these older buildings and trying to repurpose them is a fool's chore. But I think the long run, it gives back to the village something that should remain. And now that it seems that, I mean, I think this is an amazing job of reconfiguring all possibilities and still getting everything that the applicant wants in a kind of a Gary-esque compilation of shapes. My problem, I'm complimenting you as best I can on this. Well, but what has happened is the repurposing has been completely taken off the table. And now basically what's been happening with these discussions is I feel like I'm back in grad school with a student who keeps bringing me the same painting they want to do, but just keep a new composition. And a new composition doesn't change the idea of the initial complaint or the initial objection to this situation. And it seems like it's a situation of who can get worn down first. And we finally say, well, given these last 4 different options, I guess I'll take C, which is not anything that I ever wanted. But you've worn me out, and now I've got a proposition to move a barn across the street, which is, where's that going to be? If it was moved across the street, it's not helping the original intent either. So that's all.
Thank you.
I could say one more thing.
Uh,
One more, quickie.
Go ahead, please.
The Historical Society has enough trouble just getting the monthly bills paid. There is no way on the face of this earth they could ever rebuild this barn if it were moved over to their property. So that's a false gift. He knows very well that they cannot. I mean, we're just having enough trouble
Yeah,
just,
we understand.
you
that.
understand it.
It's not really that's not the pertinent issue here. So,
Just a few quick points. The houses on Elm are also two-family. Not all of them, but they're not all one-family. So let's be accurate on what it is. And the houses that are two-family on Elm Street are significantly larger than the building that we're proposing. The idea of moving it, I didn't say the Historical Society would pay for it. I said that the applicant wouldn't pay for it. And I'm not the applicant, I'm representing the applicant. I think if it is a building of significance, as has been claimed, there should be avenues to try and do something with it. If it's not, then I would say that that is being put forward as somewhat of a red herring. If the Historical Society wouldn't feel that it was justified in making an effort to raise funds for its restoration, I don't know why it would be appropriate to expect the property owner who's bought a property with a building that was condemned by the village, ordered to be removed. We interceded on the part of the then owner. We worked out a compromise with the village that if he put a new roof on it and closed up the openings that were a nuisance, would he be allowed to leave it there? He thought the new buyer might have an interest, and it increased his value. So that's how it proceeded. The reality is, you've seen inside the building, it's what it is.
Judith Spikes, 5 Brace Terrace. I wish that someone like Steve Tilley, if not Steve Tilley, were here tonight because he has the credentials and the experience and the credibility to speak to what is historic and what preservation means and what restoration means and what it would mean to have a structure. As it is, I just have to throw myself on your mercy and say that I have lots of amateur experience both here and elsewhere in Westchester in working with so-called historic properties and in working with adaptive reuse. But first of all, if you could prove that that barn was historic or historical, which is very hard to prove if you followed any cases of historic preservation. You know, it's very hard to prove that. Does that mean Washington slept here? And did he really sleep here? He didn't sleep at Washington's headquarters down the street. That was a total myth made up by a realtor in the 1890s. But if you could prove that that barn was historic, it would lose its...
We are trying to judge architectural merits of a structure. It's not the historical...
I'm sorry.
We are not trying to establish an historical relevance to the case.
But you're trying, I think
if
you're
it is
concerned
historic,
with
if it's
the
historical, it's historical. It's not for us to.
I understand. Well,
We respect the historical style of the
okay,
building.
good. We're on this. What I'm trying to say is, but if you could prove, as has been stated, that this is a historic barn, it would lose at least 50, if not 75% of its value as historic if you move it to a different site.
I'm not even entertaining the idea of moving it. I think it's a silly idea.
Yeah, I just wanted to make that clear, that there's what you're talking about, adaptive reuse. Mr. Tilley has done that very beautifully across the street, without saying that it's historic and without moving things. Just wanted to make that clear.
Just to pick up on the last comments, I think that the idea of repurposing, it has to be viewed in what are the merits of the old structure or the barn structure. And for me, the barn is, the merits of the barn, it's based on its scale and its relationship to the surroundings, and I think creates a very interesting urban moment in the aqueduct and the corner, and especially when it relates in massing and character to what is surrounding. I think to repurpose the massing and transform it into something that it was never, the proposal that let me start by saying that I appreciate the effort, because what was at the beginning was nowhere near as interesting as what you have proposed now, which it's the beginning of something that we can probably work out a good direction. I'm not saying this is it. I have a lot of problems with it, but it's definitely much better than what was before, and I appreciate that. Now, that said, I would like to at least respect the scale and massing and its relationship to the aqueduct of the existing barn. Second is also how it relates to Steve Tilley's offices. It creates a line, and I think we discussed that at the aqueduct. Right. Creates a very special moment. Erasing or defacing the barn, I don't think it's the best strategy.
When you say erasing it?
Erasing the memory of the barn. Because, from what you propose here, it's...
Are you talking materials or?
Scale, character, style, you name it, it disappeared. But anyway, I think there is a transformation that has to happen in terms of becoming something else and integrated into what's existing. I think that the transition from the barn to the two-family house on Main, I think is not very successful. I don't appreciate the mansard roof. I think it's totally dissimilar to it's a mishmash of styles, and I think it's a problematic. The stairs in the middle, it's not quite. It puts a lot of. I will prefer not to see the staircase, the stair volume there. It kind of clusters everything together, puts too much pressure on the courtyard. That scheme needs to breathe much more. That said, I think it needs a lot of work, and I'm willing to review it carefully when you submit plans. But again, for me, the relationship of the aqueduct to the barn, it's important. It's important to maintain. The historical relevance of the barn is not for us to decide. The moment that it's going to be decided, we'll respect it. But I think there is a lot to respect from what we learned from the existing barn. That has to be taken into consideration.
Do you feel that the slight dimensional differences that were proposed do that?
Slight.
I mean, 1'6" in the height of an eave.
That doesn't change anything.
Okay.
There is some latitude to move things around.
Right.
However, I can point you of what are the interesting elements of the existing barn that are in proportion and style that are interesting to at least consider. I don't know if you can rescue them, but at least consider it because there is a lot of value to what it is. Of course, it's very difficult to restore. Of course, it may not make sense to,
Yeah. I'm pretty familiar with restoration. I mean, we've done over 200 restoration projects. We did a whole section in Chicago called Wicker Park. We directly did 25 buildings in Wicker Park and got it designated a historic district. We've done buildings here in town that were slated for demolition. Wits End was actually planned for demolition by Dave Wald. We bought it and restored it and made the economic value work out of it. We restored Genehurst. We've done a number of those projects. We obviously have a high value for that. We've done quite a number of barns, actually, and old barns that were post and beam construction, mortise and tenon, really fabulous old structures. We're still struggling with seeing the quality that makes this, which there's a lot of evidence was built in the 40s to be a replacement of the existing structure that had been there. It's a different thing.
That's fine, because I'm not going to go into that. I'm just going to what I think are the positive aspects of what's existing and what I see there is a potential to be integrated into a different into a development.
Yeah, I think that if it were shown that you're right, that and this is almost completely irrelevant for this point of the conversation.
Right.
But if it were built 5 years ago and all the houses on Elm Street were 4-family houses, that wouldn't change the way we approach
The
this.
relationship of one to the
our-
next, Chris, yeah.
Our view of this project, because what matters here is that this site and its resolution be a harmonious one. And at the moment, we all feel very strongly that the existing form of the barn is a powerful, worthwhile, worth saving massing. And so I think that if you're departing from that point and you are looking at an ensemble of disparate forms to create, one cohesive whole, I think you would be in a different place with what we were looking at. And I think,
Except that's exactly what we are trying to do.
except I see a sort of, I see a couple things happening that are driving our reluctance to embrace this. And one is that it's overcomplicated, which is something that is really the opposite of the barn. Right? The barn is simple to a fault in some ways. It can't be turned into what you need it to be.
Very
And
clean structure.
we understand that, but there is got to be some way that you can repurpose its form.
Its form would be easier repurposed if we were making it a taller structure. The challenge is we're not allowed to have units that are smaller than 600 square feet. So when we start trying to put this together in a way that makes sense economically to do, which there was a lot of criticism of trying to make an economically viable project last Thursday, but my experience is that if it's not, then the right thing doesn't happen, and often a wrong thing does. So we're trying to find a way of making this work so that the person is willing to put the money into it, that would do it the right way. The challenge is fitting the units into the building if it's effectively 1 story tall. We have 2 dormers on the roof.
But
That
hold
gives
on,
us
let
square
me-
footage.
Let me interrupt for a moment. Because right now, you're saying that what you're showing us is only marginally taller than what's there.
Right.
And you've also inserted an entire level of parking. So how could it be that you can't fit the area that you need into a structure?
If we eliminate the parking, we'd be fine. We could make it be exactly the same size as the existing structure. Fitting the parking underneath is something that pushes it makes it a struggle to get the parking level and the eave height, so you've got a usable first floor. And then the rest of it has to be up in, if you will, the loft of the old barn structure.
It's funny, and parking is not a thing that we really address here. The problem is that it's become this force that drives so much design, sometimes
Agreed.
In a very problematic way. And I don't know if the site can be resolved if you eliminate that parking and you made the 2 buildings smaller, right? Because you have an extra story that's habitable.
Absolutely easy to do.
What area do you then have in the courtyard for parking? Do you have any?
No, you would not have any parking on the
3
site.
spots in there? No, nothing?
No,
0?
it's basically, you
Why
wouldn't
is
want to
that?
have, well, because you don't want to have cars pulling in off the street and backing out over the sidewalk. It's actually something the code says you're not supposed to do. So what we've done is we've pulled it in so you can pull in underneath the building, 2 over there, 4 over here, be able to back up and pull forward out on the sidewalk. If you had only the courtyard, you'd be able to put 2 cars into it, but you'd be looking at 2 cars in the courtyard, which is also not that terrific, to create a courtyard and then put cars in it. I agree that parking is driving a lot of things in the village right now in a way that's, it's one of the arguments. It's one of the positions to take. There are others who are taking a position that parking shouldn't be driving anything, although one of the people who was mentioned this evening as being an expert in this made a very strong presentation Thursday night that the biggest problem he has is with the parking, and that he thinks whatever we do here should include the parking on the site. Our initial application did not have parking on the site. We had 3 stories, which was effectively this height, fitting in an L-shaped structure with 6 apartments and no parking on site. And when we presented that to the planning board, they made it clear that they were not willing to entertain applications that didn't at least make an effort to include the required parking. So we are trying to do what we've been asked to do. We're not being cavalier about it. Steve Hunter, who's the chairman of the planning board, mentioned that he actually said, well, maybe we need to rethink that. And so obviously there's only so many things we can show between one date and another. Two of the things that we're planning to provide for the next planning board meeting is, one is what happens here if we don't have the parking? What impact does that have? A second thing that we're looking at, because it's come up many times, is what is the as-of-right development of this site? Now, the comment made Thursday made it sound like we need all these variances, and what are you allowed to do? The reality is we need no variances for this, and what we're permitted to do is dramatically larger than this. And we could come in and build a real parking garage structure on this site and do at least 3 stories. I mean, 4 is what's currently permitted. Well, I think we need to
It might be
investigate
allowed
that.
in terms of bulk, but it might not be allowed in terms of the similarity,
It would be
Perhaps.
exactly the same as the other buildings in the area.
such
It would be
as,
the same height as the building next door.
such as?
Such as what?
So what building do you have of multifamily building on the aqueduct now?
Many of the other buildings along Main Street.
On the aqueduct?
They back up to the aqueduct.
On the
Oh,
aqueduct?
no, we can bring it, we showed that scheme.
It's subjective, that's all I'm saying.
It is,
It is
but
subjective and gives us a lot of leeway in terms of
it's not
defining what
subjective. It's,
as of right means.
we have a plan, which we showed to the planning board, not this past time, before, where we pull the building away from the aqueduct, we shift it up into the front, we attach it to the front building, we get one singular mass under which we can put a whole level of parking. So there is a viable way of doing that, and we're willing to investigate that. It's kind of that thing, though, if we go that direction and that's what makes the most sense in this, then I'll be expecting that people say, okay, great, I don't want to go through that and have people come back and say, oh, no, we don't want to do that.
Can you repeat that option?
Yes, the option would be what we showed 2 planning board meetings ago.
Yes.
We increased the setback from the aqueduct to what we were proposing.
Okay,
We were coming into the site at a different point with the vehicles. We were pulling underneath, we had a legitimate parking garage structure that was underneath the floors of apartments, and we had 3 floors of apartments above the parking, which is 100% compliant with code. So,
Isn't that the scheme we first saw?
no.
No.
The scheme you first saw has 2 buildings on the site.
And
This-
that would affect the Main Street building, though, because you
We
would
wouldn't
attach.
need to renovate the Main Street building. We could put it up close, we could maintain, say, a 10-foot separation between the 2. So we had 5 foot of window space for each one and be in compliant with all New York State codes. But what you wouldn't look at that, that'd be like an air well, if you will, from the street. It wouldn't be something that would make it look like 2 independent structures. It would make it look like one very large
That's-
structure.
Right, that's the question, because they have 2 porches right now facing
Right.
the parking where they access, I assume, whatever apartments are there.
Correct. And we've
And those
maintained.
would remain, I mean, you would still have an alleyway?
Well, we've
How would-
left that as it is now. We're not taking that away. We're maintaining the walkway through there so they can get to their 2
Correct.
areas. If we move the building over, we'd have to see. I think we would take that away. I think what we would do is reorganize the apartments in the building so that you would have a very different layout in the building, because you might as well do that then.
So who owns the Main Street building right now?
Leon Sutton,
So it's the same owner?
same owner.
I see, okay. I didn't get that the first time around, I guess. I think that it comes down to what you and the owner are trying to do is maximizing the potential for the property. Unfortunately, we have seen applications in the last few months where it's been, 50% of what's allowed, 60% of what's allowed, and maybe
We're
that's
way
something.
under what's allowed.
I
And
don't know where you are with what's allowed. but maybe that's something that-
We are talking of a total of 6 residential units, where if we massed out the building in compliance with code, we can probably do 18. So we are much smaller than what
But
is.
you wouldn't have the parking for that, no matter what.
No, we can do a parking garage structure on the site that does that fine. That's not a
And
problem.
that will comply with all the regulations?
Complies with all regulations. It only needs to be 64 feet deep. We have plenty of room for that.
And
So-
for the parking?
We can do parking on the site to accommodate it. If that's a direction that people want us to go, we'll take a look. I think we're gonna need to do that because I don't think, I mean, what we heard Thursday night was, why aren't we showing what can be done on the site? So I think we should provide that.
Well, we don't want you to churn wheels either, but I think.
Not
the
churning
iron-
wheels,
the iron
because
had a
the
point that
owner
these
might
are the
say,
things-
wow, this is terrific, I can get 18 units, much greater value, one singular nice building, doesn't have any of this complexity of all this too busyness, and solves a lot of problems. I don't think it's as good, but my opinion doesn't value much.
Many problems, but not others. And we're trying to rescue, you know, to go along with what you're proposing now, which is, again,
I don't know, I'd have to see, but we could possibly even
Just build a
use the
skyscraper.
existing barn as the entrance into the parking garage and leave that as the structure on the site and pull in through that to get into the garage underneath the 3 stories of apartments. We can take a look at that and see if that is a resolution. The existing building's
fair enough.
24 feet.
Without preconceived ideas, I would like to be surprised for the good. So if you prove me that what you have now, what you're proposing has better value than what's existing, I'll give it a good consideration. However, so far, the direction that you're going is much better than the direction that we saw last time. However, we still, again, my opinion, the barn has a lot of character that it's important to, it will be interesting to maintain.
We'll take a look at that
Character,
option.
style, simplicity, there is something very powerful on how it relates to the aqueduct, how you make it work in terms of a small multifamily development. By all means, I'm willing to give you the.
Yeah, I think that's, that's a very viable way of looking at it. I mean, we hadn't looked at it that way before, so I think it's an interesting idea. If we use the barn, we leave the barn, we restore it so it's structurally sound.
It doesn't have to be repurposed nor restored, I'm just.
We wouldn't be at that point, it would just be an element on the site.
Probably rebuilt. It probably, to restore this barn and rebuilding will be very different, very similar. By the time that you start working around the barn, you're going to be building it 90% or rebuilding it. Again.
Well, not if all you're using it is as an entrance structure. You could probably just do a very, you could do a historic preservation, which is to leave as much of it in its current intact as possible, and only do that which is necessary to make it sound and secure.
All I'm saying is learn from the merits of the existing structure, and it will be, interesting to give it a good consideration to the good qualities of what's now.
Yeah, I mean, I think,
we're not
in my
going-
opinion, we've done that, but we'll continue working. You know us, we neither go away nor do we refuse to take a look at options.
I did have a comment on the presentation that you have now, that central structure, the tall element.
Yeah.
It just looks very far into the rest of the.
I don't know the right
architecture.
roof for that. I mean, I think, many of the other buildings on Main Street have a flat roof, so I think you could do that. You can tell from the way we've looked at it.
It's just the sloping walls, it just looks.
On the corners, well, you're surrounded with mansards there. You've got 4 mansards that are neighboring effectively.
But this is
But the
not,
barn is not a mansard.
No, the barn is not, but there was a very bright man on the sidewalk who said, maybe you can do something to break down this and have it be a collection of parts. And I interpreted that as being not the same one.
I like
Yeah.
the massing and the volume,
Right.
the volumes that are creating and the playfulness of this is fine. Stylistically.
Yeah, stylistically, I have no commitment to that
It's a
roof.
clash.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it should be.
obviously for you to get that apartment to work out, you have to have very large dormers in the mansard. And there's very little of the mansard left after you do the dormers.
And maybe we go the
And-
same way we went with 66, 68, which is in the end, the mansard disappears, and it's just the setback metal box that is setting itself free from the floors below, which I think worked well there. We can certainly, I have no, as I'm sincere, I have no commitment to the mansard. We were trying to figure, we had a meeting tonight I had to put a roof on it, so we did. That's the only commitment we had to that form.
Okay, thank you. I think we covered our concerns, and Ed, are you aware if the planning board is awaiting something formal from us, or?
I don't think you've got anything set.
I don't
for
think
you
we're
to,
ready for-
opine on yet.
Yeah, I'm picturing that we're gonna have another planning board meeting that'll probably take a step from this meeting here, and probably from there and return back to here, seeing what that is, and this is all still while we're site plan review. I'm not sure how the village is currently, what process they're currently following. They seem to be kind of making it up a little bit as they go, but I think that's fine, because I think it's going in the right direction. I know they're talking about making changes that,
I know, I
Yeah.
wanted to just confirm with Ed that the planning board wasn't waiting for
Us
an
to-
opinion
They-
in
I think
writing
they
from
will
us
wait.
regarding this application, regarding, not the application, but what we've seen. So if that's
Right.
not the case, then that's fine,
well, they
Thank
are
you.
waiting, but I don't think they're expecting to hear by the next meeting, so.
I understand.
And I don't think we're ready for that either, so
Okay.
we'll keep going and working, and we'll be hopefully back to you at your first meeting in June, because you guys have decided to take Memorial Day off. Good
gotta
idea,
take a vacation.
thanks.
Thank you. No motion to be made, as this is not an application. Thanks, Patty. Thank you for everyone. Thank you, Bruce. The next project is 31 Maple Street. Please.
No, the fence. I don't know, maybe.
Okay, 31 Maple Street, then we'll be done.
Well, we have the fence and, well, there's a,
You need to set up, that's what it is? You need to set up, that's what it is?
No, 31, we have not, we don't have a SketchUp or a 3D of any of that. This is a little bit of an interesting project because it was approved by the village once before, but that was before a lot of things were changed in the code. Certainly before the sky exposure plane became a part of the code. So what we've done is we have, and we'll, again, kind of to make sure everyone understands exactly what we've done, we've submitted the exact same plans as were previously approved. We have made no modifications to it to try and accommodate things. Actually, you're right, I do have a PowerPoint with photographs, thank you. It's hard to do this like 3 things in a row, it's not easy. So, let's see. And if I can close this now and try and find where this is. Okay, this is the wrong one, but I'll close that one too. Cancel, and I'll do it this way because I don't know what that means. Okay, so this project is on Maple Street. That's not right. Okay, there we go. So this is replacing an existing structure that's an existing 2-family house on Maple Street, which has been determined by the owner, not by us, to be in such a state of disrepair that what they want to do is take it down and build a new 2-family house using modular construction. The property is also improved with a 2-car garage and other parking spaces in the back. And we have a number of images that we can show, but before I get to those, just to kind of go through the sky exposure plane, we're hitting about in the midpoint of the second floor. With the sides in the back, we're fine, but in the front, we're hitting into the gabled roof. As I noted, we had this same plan exactly before, so we haven't made modifications to it. I'm thinking we need to give some thought to the sky exposure plane, which I think we can do with the front. I don't know if it's going to mean anything with the sides. As a point of reference, the neighbor house to its property side yard is about 2 feet. So if you did the sky exposure plane here, it's hitting in about here on this house. We're coming in, we've increased our side yard setbacks to the existing house. The existing house has a 5-foot side yard. We've got a total of 20 feet. Before we got involved, a variance was granted for one of the sides to be 9 foot something instead of 10, which I honestly don't understand, but that's what they did, so we've kept that. If I go up the street, you've got this quirky little interesting house. You start to get the sense of how close the buildings are on the street. And any of these, none of these, with the exception perhaps of this one on this side, would meet the sky exposure plane. Here's a grouping of 4, which are almost the equivalent of a row of, row houses. You see the spaces that are between them. It's the, character of this neighborhood. Here's the proposed house, the site of the proposed house again. And as we go down the street, this one actually is one of the, it may be the only house on this side of the street that would comply. The others are so close together that there's just no way that they would, comply. Kind of all the way, as you go all the way down the street, you're getting the same. Now, when you get down, I'm turning it around, I think here, and I'm coming, no, I'm still going down. So here, I'm across the street. I guess, yeah, here I'm across the street with these. So on the other side of the street, we actually do have more space, and some of those would probably comply. But you still have some that are, just small and don't really, have any chance for it. This is the house from the back. It's much, it's a taller house than what we're proposing. It's what it is. So that would come down, and that's the old garage, which so far no one has suggested, but we are keeping this. We'll be restoring that one. It probably is actually older than the one on Elm Street. This just shows you kind of a contextual understanding of it. This is the property in question. You see the proximity of the other houses on the street. Even across the street, you do have a couple that are, much tighter than the sky exposure plane could possibly work. So in this MDR1 zone, it's a tough thing to get that to work. And I guess what I'm looking for from this board is its feeling on that. I think there are 3 options here. One is you say it's fabulous as is, and you say let's approve it. That's an option. I'm not saying that's the likely one. A second is that you want us to look at what we could do of cutbacks in the previous design so that we would be able, see if we could reduce the encroachment into the sky exposure plane. The third position, which I could see the merit given the history on the SEP and where we stand with other issues right now in the village, is because it's so significant, this board could decide that they would want that to be a zoning board issue and have us go that route with the ZBA. But that's fully up to you, and we'll do whatever you recommend.
Thank you for suggesting an out, but we're not shy about our responsibility, and we are happy to entertain exceptions to the sky plane regulation if it's warranted by some sort of hardship that you can prove to us. Now, it seems pretty obvious that this neighborhood and this site have a number of constraints that may make it more difficult for you, but the only way that we can analyze that rigorously is to see the comparison of what is feasible if you were to comply with the sky exposure plane and what that would give you. And then I think another thing, a diagram really, that could really help us would be to understand what the existing house, what the condition of this existing house is. Now, I know that
the condition in terms of sky exposure.
In terms of the sky exposure plane, because if you were to, for example, completely renovate the interior and put a new cladding and new windows and new doors, which many people come and do, you could keep obviously, you keep the massing you have, irrespective of whether that violates sky exposure plane or not. And you have a new house. Now, there may be some particular reasons why this house, you can't do that with this house. And if that's the case, we would need to understand that, and that would be, I believe, a requirement for us to
Sure.
to entertain I mean, it's not a variance, like making an exception.
Well, the modifications that you're empowered to do.
Yeah, I would like to add that he said the hardship. Hardship is going to be tough to prove here, but I think the sky exposure plane doesn't apply in Maple Street altogether because it's a problem. And if you prove us that sky exposure plane 80% of Maple Street doesn't comply, then to make this house complying will be dissimilar to what's happening. Yes, go ahead.
I've already done a study on the 50 by 100 lot zones, and 95% all failed, existing houses.
Right.
And you cannot build up a one-story house in that zone to a 2.5-story house without breaking the sky exposure plane.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. So reinforcing that concept, I don't know who came up with the sky exposure plane in Maple Street to begin with, but
That's my fault, but
but
ignorant that.
But I think
all
there
I'm
was
saying is
We planned it as a tool,
that
not
I think I'm not ready to make a recommendation to move to the ZBA. I need to.
Well,
to
I think
about it.
you've given me exactly what I think makes sense to do. And I think,
I have a question for you.
Sure.
Is that my understanding was that the sky exposure plane is really in lieu of floor area ratio? Because that was the first question I had a couple of years ago to someone. Having said that, if someone, obviously, as you said, on Maple Avenue, 90% of the houses don't meet this. Where would this house fit in with the size of houses on that street would be the question I would have.
okay.
Accepting
Yeah.
that 90% of the houses don't meet that, there would be the volume issue then, because either it's floor area ratio or it's sky exposure plane, and I think that floor area ratio is a much better tool.
You and I will
practice in the
respectively
rest of
dis-
Westchester Fairfield County.
We'll respectfully
And-
disagree with one another. I don't think a floor area ratio works whenever it goes below 1. I think when you get to the fractions, it's such a nuance that it just isn't dependable. Irvington has it. We have worked with that for years. It does not succeed in necessarily making better houses.
Not only that, unfortunately, my feeling is that the sky exposure plane has generated not necessarily the best architecture. That has come about with these Dutch gambrels that are out of proportion.
I agree.
Because people want to do the,
Yeah,
45 degree.
but I
But in
think,
any case,
but that's why there's a
Typology of lots, I think it's a problem.
yeah.
And the proof will see that when you do this house, that it will
Right.
fully comply with sky exposure plane, in the context of Maple Street, it will be like a mistake.
right.
So that's the study we need to see.
And maybe this project can be helpful in, if we go through that process.
And analyzing.
In figuring out what is it, where should it be? I was very instrumental because they were threatening to make an FAR, and I was struggling to come up with something that would avoid the FAR. The sky exposure plane was somebody else's suggestion, and it was indicated as a tool to evaluate the extent to which you could be imposing on someone else. The original idea was, if you're not penetrating the sky exposure plane, then any discussion about the overly large house didn't need to be had. It was only when you're penetrating it that you'd have that.
Let's be
But I
fair.
don't think that works.
Let's
so.
address this application.
We wanna
because-
talk about all the
Because I
buildings
would
in
also
town.
like to, this is not a guinea pig for an exercise in what the code
No,
should be.
no.
I
agree.
simply, it's very clear to all of us that there is a rule in place. How it's written is very clear, and what the exceptions and how they can be made are also very clear.
Yep.
And the only way we can make those is for you to provide the drawings that we talked about. And I think that we will have quite a different discussion when we see those drawings.
I think that makes perfect sense.
So I will
Continue to the next meeting.
continue this
Yeah.
to the next meeting. I think, so we're skipping
And
one,
we
so
have
it'll be June.
we have a whole bunch more time, so
Yeah, Tremendous amount.
we'll try and make good use for it.
second, Yair. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
in favor? Unanimous, thanks. Um, 215 Judson. Aye. Thank you for your patience.
I don't use like NET's microphone, if that's okay.
Well, would you please, you can,
It's all about the TV.
we would. Now, it may be that you have an amazing presentation in place, as we have seen some very elaborate presentations regarding fences lately, but I think this is a very straightforward application.
This is a backyard fence.
Yeah.
This is a backyard fence
Uh-huh.
for, oh, I'm sorry, my name's Carrie Patry. I live at 215 Judson Avenue.
It's all compliant, right?
Yes.
It looks fine to me.
I think it looks excellent.
Thank you. Hopefully, yes, let's, not to be, I hope this is not rude, but we'd just like to make a motion to approve this as submitted.
That's
And, second, all in favor?
Okay.
Okay, thank you for coming and for waiting. 7 Fairlawn, evening. Please.
Every time you say something I don't agree with.
No heckling, Patty.
Kidding. I'm going home.
Not for this, I mean, full size.
No, that's, those
Okay.
Building department.
Tomorrow.
I need just PDFs, and which you gave me.
Thank you. Good luck.
now that you got this, you can go to the next one.
So do you know what's different here?
I think the stucco, something. This house is complete.
I think isn't this the other one?
Is this the other one, the one next to it?
Yeah, there's an empty one and then. Thanks, baby.
Thank you, Patty.
So this is Patty's private spot. Here's the- This is better. Right, it's over here. Here's the microphone. Take this one that's hooked up right now.
Wasn't the other house done by someone else?
Well, actually, it was done by Christina, but
Oh,
then,
did you?
they had an engineer come the last time.
Right.
I don't know why, yeah, just to make some changes. We did not pay.
This is house on Fair Lawn.
Thank you.
That was approved,
Oh, this is the
I guess,
existing.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
It's almost completed.
Oh,
There
so
is
this
some
is the same.
Oh, this is the one that's made from.
extreme south of the new modern one, extreme south on Fair Lawn on the river.
Yeah.
So it's almost completed. These are just changes to already
Yeah.
approved. These are the as-built
Okay.
for you to okay.
Okay.
I'm Christina Griffin, I think you know. I'm here to show you some of the minor changes that we made, and most of them, I believe, are consistent with the original design. Starting with the lower level plan, what we did is we, because of grade changes, we had to extend the stair a few more treads down to grade, the stair from the deck. The deck was extended to the end of the house. We also changed the windows and doors on the lower level just because we decided that the pool, the future pool will be on this side of the house rather than on the western side. And that changed the layout of this floor plan, and I'll show you how it changed the windows and doors. And we almost have the same type of windows and size of windows. It's just a matter of changing the location so that we can have the pool bath on this side near where the pool will be going, rather than on this side. On this level, we extended the deck a few feet to the end of the house, and we extended the steps to the grade. And we also added steps on the north side so that you could get down from the garage all the way down around the house. We modified the entry steps so they were not as wide as we had originally. Just we thought there was a better scale doing them that way. And on the second floor, we had a menu change of these windows going from fixed to operable windows. On the front facade, the original design is the same windows. We just had this was not in alignment with the one above. And we also had originally two sizes of siding, and we thought the original design was a little bit complicated. We ended up going with a 7-inch exposure of hardy plank throughout. Also, because of grade changes, the survey was not correct, and we had to change the location of the garage level, and it actually was lowered compared to the original design, but the same garage doors, the same fenestration is here in this facade. And also we had a feature wall that was going to be an echo panel. It became, I think, we thought it was too difficult to install, so we went with a wall of natural cedar, which you'll see on the photographs. On this northern facade, we added this stair going down from the driveway to the going down to the end of the grade here, so you can connect with the path going around the house. All the windows and doors are the same. And in the back, original design had these big sliding doors. They were actually over here, and the windows were over there. We just flipped them. That's because of the layout, of the interior layout. We put the exercise room over here rather than at the end. And then on the south elevation, this is just showing that we have doors coming out from this side, which will be leading to a pool one day, and this is the door into the pool bath. And the stair from the deck was extended because of a grade differential that we found on site that we were not aware of when we did the original drawings. These are photographs of the house. This is the front facade. Instead of the eco panel, we decided to use natural cedar, horizontal tongue and groove cedar. This is the same facade, except we decided on, instead of having half hardy plank, half stucco, we're all hardy plank, all the same size. For simplicity, we're trying to make this look like a collage of different materials, so we just simplified it a little bit on site. This is the same feature wall. This is the corner of the garage that we originally submitted to the AHRB. This is the south facade, and the difference between the original plans is just simply we have doors here instead of windows, and we have a door to a pool bath instead of a window. This is the fence that was approved a few months ago by the AHRB. It's a strong color right now, but it's going to mellow over time because it's a new cedar. We also added a waste screen that looks, it's a similar design to the fence. This is the front, of the building. We also had hardy plank wrapping all around the front facade, and we decided to continue that dark midnight horizon stucco so that we'd have a nice break from the sea of hardy plank. This is the rear facade, and the upper levels are exactly the same as drawn, except for this. Some of these windows went from fixed to operable. And then on the lowest level, these seem like great pictures. We just simply swapped. It changed the location of the sliders and the windows. This is the stair going from the deck down to grade. Do you have any questions?
It's a very nice house. I walk by there all the time. Have the owners, when do they plan to move in, or have they moved in?
After we get to see about, soon after tonight.
Well, that should be easy.
I don't see any problems.
No comments. Okay. No, looks great. I was by there the other day also. I think I'd like to make a motion, we approve this, the changes as submitted. Second. Yair seconds. Unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Did you review?
Great.
Just minor comment on the second page.
Okay. Next are the minutes from December 8th, 2014. Yair, some comments?
Yeah, on the second page, it says that the change contingent upon the following. It says that the new roof area, blah, 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 then goes to the stucco will match the existing stucco. It should say the new stucco, or the proposed stucco will match existing stucco. And the proposed hardy board will match the existing hardy board. That's all. The rest is fine.
Just those. What happened with this? This is for the country club.
It's a confusing statement. Yeah, that doesn't say it.
It's fine, it's harmless. Okay, I'd like to make a motion, we approve these minutes with the, is there a minor change, with that minor change you suggested? Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Any seconds, all in favor?
Approved.
Unanimous, approved. Motion to adjourn tonight's meeting. Second. All in favor, unanimous.
Did it go home first?